Number 8. Ashley Ewing. On May the 19th of 2006, a 22-year-old charity worker was dispatched to a home in the northeast England city of Newcastle in order to deliver a letter. Psychology graduate Ashley Ewing had been sent there by her employer, Mental Health Matters, a charitable organization that sought to provide housing support to those afflicted by mental illness. The letter that the young woman had been tasked with delivering had reportedly been written to notify homeowner Ronald Dixon about an outstanding debt. A next-door neighbor later told investigators that within 15 minutes of Ewing's arrival at the man's home, they'd heard the young woman produce what they described as a minute-long hysterical screech. Shortly thereafter, Dixon walked with his dogs to a police station where he allegedly confessed to murdering the charity worker. The police discovered that the man had stabbed Ewing a total of 39 times, breaking 3 knives over the course of his frenzied assault. The fatal incident wasn't the first instance in which Dixon, a paranoid schizophrenic, had acted out violently. It was reported that he'd previously attacked his parents with a hammer while they'd been sleeping in their bed. Despite the man's documented mental illness and violent inclination, Ewing had been sent to his residence by herself. Mental Health Matters' ill-advised decision received harsh criticism in the wake of the young woman's grisly murder. Dixon was transferred to a secure psychiatric unit after pleading guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Number 7. Megan Scotcher. Megan Scotcher, a resident of Derbyshire, England, was diagnosed with cancer as a teenager, but the disease eventually went into remission. At the age of 28, Scotcher told her friends and family that her malignant illness had returned, claiming the diagnosis was terminal. Between June and December of 2020, the mother of 2 collected roughly $22,000 in donations from a GoFundMe campaign that had been set up by her partner without her knowledge. One individual even reportedly participated in a 620-mile bike ride to help raise money for Scotcher and her children. Unbeknownst to the woman's loved ones or the charitable benefactors contributing to her support fund, she had fabricated her cancer diagnosis and was actually in overall good health. The details of Scotcher's manipulation of others' good intentions were revealed during a hearing at Nottingham Crown Court in 2021. It emerged that the woman had been struggling with mental health issues for several years prior to the inception of her cancer scam. She'd reportedly intended to take her own life and had concocted the fake terminal diagnosis in an effort to prepare her family for her eventual death. Scotcher claimed not to have originally planned on accepting the donations that were later given to her under false pretenses. She stated in court that the elaborate lie had snowballed out of her control after her partner had created the GoFundMe campaign on her behalf. Scotcher was ultimately given a suspended prison sentence and was also ordered to perform 100 hours of community service. Number 6. Danielle Stoiker and Monica Lilly. In November of 2019, 2 women were jailed for operating a fake charity organization that targeted elderly residents of North Yorkshire, England. Danielle Stoiker and Monica Lilly, both in their early 20s at the time, had perpetrated a series of burglaries by deceiving homeowners that they represented a charity for the hearing impaired. The young women reportedly followed a strict methodology when conducting their nefarious activities. They went from door to door requesting donations to their foundation, which supposedly served the purpose of providing financial aid for people with hearing disabilities. North Yorkshire police reported that Stoiker and Lilly carried falsified documentation with them so as to legitimize themselves and their fake organization in the eyes of their victims. In an effort to further uphold their deception, Stoiker allegedly pretended to be deaf herself during some of the burglaries they'd performed. After engaging people in brief conversations about their purported charity work, the thieves would subsequently ask to use the restroom or for a glass of water. One of the 2 women would then stealthily peruse the house for valuable items to steal, while the other distracted the homeowner. The fake charity workers were eventually tracked down by the authorities after a resident had reported them to the police. They were sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison after pleading guilty to 6 burglaries and 10 counts of fraud. Number 5. Darius Kaminskas. Beginning in April of 2010, Darius Kaminskas, aged 25, swindled UK residents out of nearly $50,000 of donations by posing as a charity worker. The Lithuanian national allegedly pretended to be employed by the British charitable foundation Barnardo's, which collects people's old clothes in order to donate them to children in need. In reality, the man had no association with any charity group. Kaminskas and his 3 accomplices reportedly delivered fake charity bags to various households in Dorset, Wiltshire, and the West Midlands. After the homeowners had filled the bags with unwanted clothing, the con men would collect the donations, supposedly to send them to Barnardo's, as had been promised. However, the clothes were actually redirected to Lithuania, where they would be sold on the second-hand market. Kaminskas' schemes were eventually uncovered by observant would-be victims who'd noticed that the name Barnardo's had been misspelled on the charity bags they'd received on their doorsteps. When investigators looked into the scam artist's activities, it also emerged that he'd posed as a breast cancer charity worker to obtain even more fraudulent donations. It was estimated that Kaminskas had stolen roughly $48,000 over the course of 9 months. Following a trial at the Bristol Crown Court, Kaminskas was sentenced to 13 months behind bars. Number 4. The murder of Esther Brown. A 67-year-old charity worker from Scotland was abused and murdered inside her home in May of 2021. The victim, identified as Esther Brown, was described as a beloved and active member of the Glasgow community. Prior to her death, the pensioner had reportedly spent much of her time volunteering for various charitable initiatives in the area. On the night of May the 28th, a man named Jason Graham, aged 30, had been thrown out of a pub after he'd become aggressive and violent while out drinking with his family. Later that evening, Graham allegedly broke into Brown's apartment and brutally attacked her. In addition to punching and kicking the woman repeatedly, it was reported that Graham had beaten her over the head with pieces of a wooden chair that had been broken during the struggle. The man proceeded to abuse the victim before fleeing the scene with her bank card, which he subsequently used to purchase cigarettes from a nearby store. A post-mortem examination of Brown's body indicated that the woman had fought back against her assailant before he overpowered her. It was revealed during the case's legal proceedings that Graham had previously been in prison for assaulting an elderly woman. In 2013, he'd been released on license 5 years later, but he was ultimately sent back to prison for a minimum term of 19 years in connection to Brown's murder. Number 3. Open Doors. 2 men from Essex, England, launched a charity shop called Open Doors in 1991, which would eventually be investigated for fraud. The express purpose of their store was to purchase equipment and goods for local charities in and around the town of Westcliff-on-Sea. The founding members of the charitable organization were identified as 57-year-old David Papagavriel and Terence Kelly, aged 73, who'd previously worked as a driving instructor and a truck driver, respectively. In 2014, Open Doors reportedly entered into a partnership with Dove Promotions, which was run by Ian and Peter Ellis, a father and son from Lancashire. Court documents revealed that the collaborating charity groups had employed people pretending to be veterans in order to collect cash donations, which were ostensibly for disabled soldiers. The collectors wore shirts printed with the phrase "Save Our Soldiers" and sported camouflage pants when they campaigned for donations at various railway stations across the country. The operators of these spurious fundraisers allegedly sold raffle tickets and branded merchandise on behalf of Open Doors and Dove Promotions. The deceptive operation reportedly earned the 4 men roughly $750,000, the entirety of which was subsequently deposited into the fraudulent charity workers' bank accounts. Financial investigators eventually uncovered the scam, resulting in criminal prosecution for the owners of both charity organizations. Papagavriel, Kelly, and the Ellises all admitted fraud by abuse of position. They each received suspended prison sentences and were consequently ordered to perform varying amounts of unpaid community service. Today's topic was requested by One Hairy Guy, Macam Aurora, and Seymour Brown. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. The killing of Abdul Samad. In October of 2017, a pair of teenagers were arrested following a 4-hour violent crime spree that resulted in the death of a 28-year-old charity worker named Abdul Samad. Details of the incident emerged during a hearing at the Old Bailey Criminal Court in central London. The perpetrators were identified as 19-year-old Nathan Gilmani and Troy Thomas, aged 18. According to court records, the teens had prowled the streets of West London on the night of October the 16th, with the alleged intention of carrying out a series of robberies. Gilmani and Thomas reportedly concealed their faces with balaclava masks, prior to setting out on their rampage on a moped. During the course of the evening, the young men allegedly conducted a total of 9 knife-point robberies, one of which had targeted Samad. The defenseless charity worker was accosted on the streets of Paddington by the 2 armed robbers, who demanded he hand over his cell phone and other valuables. Despite the fact that Samad proceeded to do exactly what the teenagers had asked of him, Gilmani and Thomas stabbed him 4 times. The attackers left Samad to die and continued their crime spree, reportedly robbing another victim just minutes after the stabbing had taken place. It was described in court how Samad had spent much of his time as a youth charity worker, seeking to help the very sort of young men who'd taken his life. Gilmani and Thomas were each given life sentences following a lengthy criminal trial. Number 1. Amy's Promise. A North Carolina woman was taken into custody in April of 2019 after local authorities discovered that she'd profited from falsely claiming that she had cancer. The arrest of Seagrove resident Amy Elisa Hammer, aged 30, was the culmination of a Randolph County police investigation that had been launched following an anonymous tip. The mother of 3 had allegedly told her family that she'd been diagnosed with a bone marrow cancer called chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Hammer would later reveal that she'd fabricated her diagnosis in an effort to save her failing marriage. When news of her supposed sickness spread throughout the community, Hammer reportedly began receiving cash donations that were meant to help pay for her medical bills. The woman subsequently created a Facebook page called Amy's Promise, where she documented her fictional bout with cancer to draw further sympathy from her growing base of followers. Upon her arrest, Hammer was charged with obtaining property by false pretense and was held on a $2,000 bond. She publicly admitted her wrongdoings in an apologetic interview with local news outlet WGHP. Hammer also promised to return the charitable donations she'd collected, the total amount of which was not revealed during the initial reports on the matter. Thanks for watching. Would you rather give all your disposable income to charity or open your house as a safe haven for homeless people? Let us know in the comments section below.